Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We're gathered here today on the traditional territory of the signatories of Treaty 7, and I also acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a very deep connection with this land. I'm Sarah Hoffman, and I'm the Alberta NDP Deputy Leader and two-term MLA, and now I'm the candidate in Edmonton-Glenora. I'm joined by Michael Lisboa-Smith, a teacher and candidate with Alberta's NDP in Calgary Northwest, as in Valencia, who's also a teacher and an Alberta NDP candidate East, and also Julia Hayter is here, an educational assistant and the Alberta NDP candidate for Calgary Edgemont. Thank you all for being here. We're also joined by Lisa Bush, Dustin Horchach, and Marriott Pearson, who are parents of incredible children and fierce advocates for public education. And of course, we're also joined by our amazing leader, Rachel Notley. Investing in public education is one of the smartest investments we can make as a province. Not only is it an investment in the success of our kids, it's an investment in the success of Alberta. But immediately after being elected, the UCP made massive cuts. And then in the middle of the pandemic, the UCP laid off 20,000 support staff, including substitute teachers, school bus drivers, and educational assistants. Worst of all, these layoffs came just 2 weeks after the UCP promised that they wouldn't do so. And that promise was broken with a single tweet on a weekend. This meant that kids who were already struggling due to the pandemic were left without the support that they desperately needed. The next school year, the UCP continued to under-resource our schools and our students. Now I hear from parents who are deeply concerned about overcrowded classrooms. And for those kids who are struggling, they aren't getting the support that they need, and they're falling further and further behind. Despite having more students in the education system than when the UCP formed government, there are fewer teachers and EAs. We are currently 20,000 teachers short of what we need to be at, and Alberta is left the highest student-to-teacher ratio of anywhere in the country. Regularly, I hear from parents and teachers who are worried about the impacts that this will have on kids. Michael has been one of these teachers, and he's experienced these cuts firsthand, so he'll have a little bit more to share. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Sarah. As Sarah mentioned, the UCP's cuts to education have had a detrimental effect on students. Before putting my name forward to run as the Alberta NDP candidate for Calgary Northwest, I was a teacher. In particular, I worked with students who faced barriers to learning. And it was the UCP's attacks on public education, along with their backwards curriculum, that inspired me to join Rachel's team. Given what I've already seen the UCP do to our education system, I'm very concerned about what Danielle Smith might do with another 4 years. Danielle Smith is risky and unpredictable. We already know she wants Albertans to pay for a doctor, and she has said in the past that she wants to, and I quote, defund public schools. We cannot let this happen. Instead of defunding our public education, we need to invest in it. Lisa is a teacher and a mother of 2 amazing young kids, and she will share her experiences with us today.
Thank you, Michael. We know that Alberta has been at the bottom of the list in the country when it comes to per-child funding, and the resulting class sizes have been extremely challenging. I am a parent and I am also a teacher. I've taught in the US and then I taught in Calgary for 10 years. I resigned in 2021 to be home with my kids. If we hadn't been hit with a pandemic, I certainly would have continued teaching at the time. But the uncertainty of it all, schools open, schools shut down, and the lack of support for educators and parents from the province caused me to take the decision to leave. I intend to return to teaching part-time, and knowing that there will be more teachers and EAs coming on board is fantastic news. Our kids need and deserve this support, and teachers deserve the support that will bring class sizes down and help them focus on what they are passionate about doing, and that's helping kids learn. I know that learning lags and kids' mental health have been impacted by the pandemic, and we need to ensure our kids get the attention and academic supports they need to succeed. This commitment will not only benefit students, teachers, and families, but it's good for our entire province. Young, healthy, educated, and well-adjusted children are going to benefit our society now and in the future. I am thrilled to know we can trust the Alberta NDP to support our kids, teachers, families, and public education. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Michael, for sharing your stories and standing up with us today. Too many parents and too many teachers share your experiences, and we need that to change. And there is no one more committed to standing up for students, teachers, and all educational staff than Rachel Notley. She's here to share our plan for better education.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you everyone for being here. You know, I firmly believe that our greatest resource isn't what's under the ground. It's actually who walks on top of it. It's our people. And if we want to build a better future for our kids, our grandkids, and our province, we need to invest in education. In fact, we commissioned a report from former ATB Chief Economist Todd Hirsch on how to use our resource wealth to strategically invest for the future. And Todd listed education as one of the top areas for the province to invest in. And he said that when considering government spending as investments in the future, few areas match education. But Danielle Smith and her colleagues don't understand this. Since 2019, we have seen 36,000 additional students enter our schools, and yet we have fewer teachers. It's unimaginable. Just stop and think about that for a minute. 36,000 children walking into our schools, no extra teachers hired to teach them. It's shocking. Now, I've visited schools and I've asked teachers how they're doing in the face of that, and I've watched them break down in tears time and time again. The cuts imposed by the UCP were cruel. They were incompetent. And to be clear, they were carried out in an effort to starve our public schools and force more families to turn elsewhere. Teachers deserve better than this. Kids, parents, and of course all Albertans deserve better than this. Public education is the great equalizer. It's the great opportunity. And the Alberta NDP government that I lead will deliver better public education. So today, with that in mind, I'm so proud to be here with you. We are announcing that an Alberta NDP government will hire 4,000 more teachers and 3,000 educational assistants and support staff over the next 4 years. We will invest more than $700 million into our classrooms. This will take a major step towards reversing the UCP devastation imposed on our classrooms and the children and students inside them. And you can trust me to deliver on this major commitment because I believe fundamentally in the value of public that every student gets the attention they need to learn all that they can to better prepare them for the future. Put simply, smaller class sizes are better for our kids, better for our teachers, and better for our future. So thank you very much. And before I take any of your questions, I also want to extend my deepest sympathies and thoughts to families who have lost their homes or who have been forced from them as a result of wildfires in areas across our province. Our hearts go out to you in this very, very difficult time. And I also want to thank all of the frontline firefighters and other officials who are working with dedication and determination around the clock to contain these fires and keep Albertans and Alberta communities safe. Albertans yourselves, you can help all these folks out. I know it's hard to imagine with snow still melting in some parts of the province. But there is a province-wide fire ban in effect. So please follow it, and please be safe. Thank you, and any of us are happy to take any of the questions folks here may have.
Thanks very much. We'll start with accredited journalists here on location. Going to hand things over to Megan with Global News. Megan?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you about the fires. High Level, for example, has been asking for provincial funding to create a special center to house evacuees in circumstances like this. There hasn't been any funding allocated to that so far. Is this reaction is this response then more reactive than it is proactive?
High Level's response, you mean?
Well, the province's response to help evacuees in these situations.
Well, I think that what we know is that we need to be planning forward for adaptation. And adaptation takes a lot of different forms. Investing more in fire guard around communities that are surrounded by forests, as well as the kinds of evacuation support measures that you describe are critically important. And we know that we're going to see more of these instances in the future, not fewer. And so a whole range of adaptation and prevention efforts need to go into our long-term planning. In the short term, I just want to say again that I think all Albertans stand with those residents of communities who are threatened by fire right now, and we need to do our part to make sure that we do everything we can to keep them safe.
And so over the past 10, 12 years, going back to 2011 with Fort Mac and then 2019 with the High Level fires, we are seeing evidence of climate change and weather patterns that are changing. As a province, how do we balance using natural resources to generate so much of our economy and our wealth and our jobs with needing to address kind of those adaptations and those changes in light of the weather patterns that are changing?
Well, I mean, I think that, we need to confront the problem that is in front of us. Of course, as all Albertans, we need to work hard to do our part in reducing the threats that are posed by climate change, and of course, reducing the threat of climate change. And so we need a government that is taking a realistic and practical and effective approach to these issues, not pretending that they don't exist. In the meantime, as we deal with the threats that confront us right now, we need also to be focused on proactive planning, to invest in adaptation, to invest in community protection going forward, understanding that we are going to see more of these incidents, not fewer.
Aaron with Wildfire Calgary. Question regarding the Calgary Charter Hub and the expansion of charter schools and private schools in the province. What becomes of those expansions and those purchases of land and buildings by the government should the NDP win?
Well, when we were in government before, we maintained the similar level of funding to charters and to private schools. But today's announcement and my priority going forward is to make sure that we improve our public education, that we make up for the multiple attacks on the quality of education experienced by 95% of Alberta's students in our public education, in public schools, in Catholic schools, in the Francophone boards. That's where we are focusing our investment on improving. So this announcement isn't about any change to those areas that you identified, but it is about restoring support and resources to our public system and ensuring that with those additional resources we provide the highest quality of education to our kids in public, Catholic and Francophone schools so that more and more families just choose to be part of our public education system.
On the public funding side, will we see a continue of the rolling weighted average for schools?
We will, of course, talk to school boards about the best way forward. I mean, that rolling weighted average, there were winners and losers in it. We want to make sure that some of the communities that lost out on that funding, which is, of course, how they justified cutting the funding, get resources back. We've got urban communities with a disproportionate number of kids with special learning needs that are growing at a much faster pace than other communities, and our current funding formula does not account for them. But it's not a taking from one and giving to another kind of model. We are going to restore funding. The rolling weighted average was always about hiding the draconian cuts made to our education system under the UCP. We're focused on making sure that where our kids are, our schools get the funding we need to give the best education possible to our kids.
We'll go now to a few questions on Zoom and on the phone, and because I just didn't say it off the top, if you're on the phone, please push *9, or on Zoom, use the raise hand function. Go now to Janet French of CBC News. Janet, please unmute.
Hi there. Hopefully you can hear me.
Sure can.
Just want to follow up on the question about the weighted moving average. So I'm not hearing a commitment, though, to actually rework the funding formula. Are you saying you would come back and compensate urban divisions that lost some of the money or only got partial funding for new students, or would you actually alter the funding formula to weight the counting of students differently for the purposes of funding?
You know, what we would do, Janet, is first of all ensure that we bring 4,000 more teachers and 3,000 more EAs back into our schools. We would restore PUF, and we would also restore a range of other funding programs that were designed to support students with special learning needs. When it comes to the funding formula as a whole, we would respect school boards, and we will sit down with them and talk about what funding formula works best and how we ensure that some of the unique needs of rural boards are recognized, but ensuring going forward that we don't have a funding formula that fails to account for dramatic increases in enrollment in certain parts of the province.
Janet, do you have a follow-up?
I do. It's about educational assistant recruitment. Right now, it's very difficult for schools to recruit and retain educational assistants. They're having trouble getting them now. If you want to add 3,000 more over 4 years, I mean, they're also saying that the amount of money that they earn is paltry, right? They're not well paid, and so there's not much incentive for them to work in this field. How do you then make this an attractive enough type of work to attract 3,000 more?
Well, I will say that I think one way we make it a more attractive place to work is that we ensure that there are enough folks in our schools to actually provide support to our students so that we don't have people going to work every day and literally suffering moral injury because they're unable to provide the education that they know our students need. But there's no question as well that EAs, particularly in Alberta, their rate of pay has fallen behind what we see in other parts of the country. And we will be in our platform talking about the principle of focusing our compensation plans around supporting those who are on the lower end of the pay spectrum. And of course, we anticipate that there will be robust collective bargaining. But I don't want to go faster than that or any farther than that, Janet, because quite honestly, I'm not really interested in bargaining during a campaign or in the media. But we absolutely understand that EAs, important staff who work in our childcare centres, folks who work with people with disabilities, and many, many other frontline caring professions who work in nonprofits have struggled with a low rate of pay. And so we do need to look at ways to address that because the work that they do is critically important to the strength of our communities.
We'll go now to Alana Smith of the Globe and Mail. Alana, please unmute.
Oh, hi there. Thanks for taking my question. I know that you said earlier you're going to invest more than $700 million into classrooms. Is that just for the 4,000 more teachers and 3,000 educational assistants and support staff over 4 years, or can you just break down that funding for me?
That 700 million is over 4 years. It's essentially the cost of funding enrollment. We will have more to say in terms of the specific costs in our platform, but it doesn't include, for instance, the restoration of PUF funding, which is absolutely critical to me. I have to tell you, I sat in the legislature in utter shock when I saw the UCP decide to cut funds on the backs of the most vulnerable students, the youngest and the most vulnerable students in our school system. It was a shocking decision that they made, and it is one that we will act quickly to reverse.
Alana, do you have a follow-up?
I do, yes. I was just looking at the budget documents earlier, the pre-budget or pre-election budget that the UCP passed. I think it was sort of similar in terms of numbers. I think like 3,000 new teachers, educational assistants, and support staff, and they had made promises before to hire additional teachers, and they had trouble doing so. There just wasn't enough coming in. So maybe to follow up on Janet's question, I'm just wondering on this recruitment drive, is there going to be a focus from the NDP to recruit teachers from outside of the province? Is it just maybe to get teachers to come back to work? Like, how's that going to work? And if there's any incentives like signing bonuses, salary bonuses, anything like that?
Well, let me start by saying that the UCP commitments with respect to teachers are non-existent. We've lost teachers under the UCP, and they weren't funding to hire more teachers. They weren't even funding to retain teachers. So we've lost teachers. We've had 36,000 more kids walk through our doors and stay there. So a net increase of 36,000 children in our schools across the province, and we're down about 180 teachers. So if they've just recently decided that they're going to try to hire, a combined amount of 3,000 teachers and EAs, that's still well behind what needs to be done. And also, they've never really tried to do it. Now, I will say that we have consulted with experts in this area about the challenge of, let's say, hiring 1,000 new teachers a year. And we know it is an ambitious goal, but we are also confident that it is a goal we can achieve. Between the number of roughly 1,900 folks graduate from education in Alberta every year. Yes, we do have a fair number who retire, but we're going to do what we can to try and retain them and keep them in the school. And of course, ensuring that the class sizes start to get back to reasonable sizes, and ensuring that those teachers actually have access to educational assistance in their classrooms, that's going to help them agree to stay in that workforce. And then, of course, yes, we will also be looking to recruit teachers from outside of the province. We're very serious about this. Public education is critically important. The future of our kids is critically important. I want our kids to have the best education. I want kids with all different learning needs to learn as much as they can, because this is a fundamentally, unquestionably valuable investment in our economic future.
We have time for one more question. We'll go to Francois Joly of Radio Canada. Francois, please unmute.
Hi, Rachel. Just to follow up on the whole debate we had yesterday on the cost of net zero electricity. We talked a lot about the GDP cost of doing all of that and the impact on the economy. But it's very clear, especially today, that climate change also has a cost on GDP, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, let me just start by saying, what is very clear to everyone right now is that 2 days ago, the UCP went out and claimed a $50 billion cost that was wrong. They misrepresented $50 billion to Albertans. And 48 hours later, they have yet to make the effort to correct the record and to apologize to Albertans for misleading them with a number like $50 billion. If we can't trust them to get it right and to be straight with Albertans on something like a $50 billion number, how can we trust them over 4 years to manage our finances? Now, as you rightly say, I actually think getting to net zero in our electricity grid by 2035 represents a tremendous economic opportunity, a job creation economic opportunity, an economic growth opportunity. As well, we absolutely must take seriously the challenges imposed by climate change and our need to reduce our emissions. And there's a number of different things that we need to do, and we should never pit one against the other in terms of emissions reduction and economic prosperity. We can do both, but we need to be committed to doing both, and we need to acknowledge that the problem is real, and that we have an obligation to show leadership on it.
Francois, do you have a follow-up?
Just to follow up on that. So basically, we have Danielle Smith saying future technologies are going to save us from this problem. You're saying we're going to make money, we're going to create job with this. Aren't both point of view being a bit disingenuous with Albertans and not saying that this transition is not going to be painless? Like, is it time to say, like, this is a challenge and it's not going to be pain-free?
You know, honestly, right now, so the Calgary Economic Development actually put out a report saying that the commitment of getting to net zero on our grid by 2035 will create 60,000 jobs. What we know is that there is $16 trillion worldwide that will be invested in renewable energy between now and 2030. So I actually think that being strategic about getting to the table and making sure that Alberta gets some of that money is an opportunity. I'm not being disingenuous. And let me give you an example. When we were in government, we initiated what we referred to as the REP program. And that was a program to incent renewable energy investment here in Alberta, because up until 2015, we had had the lowest level of renewable energy investment in the country. So we constructed this program, and everyone said, oh boy, that's going to be really expensive, folks. You're really, really going to cost us a lot of money. But we went ahead with it. And that program did three things. First of all, it attracted the least expensive cost of bringing in renewable energy anywhere in the continent. It made Alberta a continental investment destination. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it also made us money. It didn't cost us anything. We came out ahead. So I actually think it is possible to do these things with thoughtful planning, well-informed planning, and a commitment to understanding that there is a cost to not doing anything, and that when it comes to attracting a progressive investment dollars from around the world, there's an opportunity for Alberta's economy.
That's all the time we have today. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Hey, guys.